All right, and welcome to the Australian AusCycling Esports Series for 2022. I'm Jethro Nagel from the Press Room Podcast, and I'm here with Matthew Keenan, my friend. We've got the first round of the series. How are you feeling for tonight? And it looks like we're just waiting for Matt to just sort out his sound, but I'm sure he is absolutely pumped, and we're going to hear from him very, very shortly. But the first round, it's absolutely exciting. We've got over almost 500 competitors signed up for the first round of the club series for AusCycling. And we'll just wait and see if Matt is on board yet. But in the meantime, let me just talk you through what the AusCycling Club Series is. Okay, so this is a race series. It's all about working with your fellow club mates around Australia, pitting club versus club to see which one will come out on top to win an absolutely ripping prize, especially if you love a special jersey in Zwift. And the prize, of course, is your own club jersey in game. So looks like we've got my co-commentator today, Matt. A little bit of audio issues, but it's all about getting the technicals right. How are you today?
Resolved, hopefully. Can you hear me now?
Loud and clear, mate. Absolutely.
Excellent. Well, we're off to a much better start the second time around. And as you just introduced the series, it's sensational being able to get that club, that real life club jersey, to win that and actually have it and use that on Zwift. And on a lot of the rides that I do, I often see the St Kilda Cycling Club jersey. And I'm a little jealous of that. It's a really big club. The club that I rode for as a kid was the Northcote Cycling Club. And we had maybe 30 to 40 members. And we had the velodrome that all the big races were held on, like the Austral Wheel Race, the Melbourne Cup on Wheels, etc. But sure, we were small in numbers, Jethro, but we had some quality. We had Gary Niewon, the Niewon family were there, triple world champion on the track. And we had this guy by the name of Cadell Evans. Cadell Evans was a member of our club as well, so it made it really hard to win a club championship.
Yeah, well, it's a great timing because, Zwift is just sort of I guess they've launched their clubs feature, which now allows the anyone in game and clubs around Australia to create their own virtual club on Zwift, and you can even set up your own rides as well and have your club bunchy on a Wednesday or a Thursday, have it in game, perhaps if it's rained out. But yeah, certainly a great feature. And my personal club here in WA, Rouchards, has just set up their club feature. So we've got our first group ride next Wednesday. But I guess we should turn our attention to the racing today, Matt. Perhaps we should talk about the course.
Yeah, well, the course today, this is one of my favourites. This is France R.G.V, and it takes in some of the iconic images that we do see in the Tour de France, including the famous Pont de Gare, which featured in the Tour in 2018. And Jethro, in the commentary position, we get the notes on all the major monuments, and the French broadcast were obviously delighted about this old viaduct. And it was on the broadcast, I think, for around about 15 minutes worth of the stage. This one today is just under 25 kilometres, 133 metres worth of altitude gain. So it's not super hilly, but it is fast. And Jethro, as you know, having ridden this course quite a few times yourself, there are plenty of opportunities to go on the attack, and I'm expecting to see some.
Yeah, certainly. It's going to be really interesting. They've started round one with a course that I guess you could say it's certainly a sprinter's course, and in fact, RGV. If anyone actually realised or wants to know what that means, it actually stands for Route Grande Vitesse. It's a pronunciation in France, which translates to high speed road. So that certainly indicates it's going to be a quick course. And the launch pad's obviously the KOM. It's a short KOM. It's 400 meters, 5%. They're going to roll into it and really probably only feel the incline of the trainer, with about 250 to go, and then it flattens out over the top. But there's a sprint point before that on the pavé, which is a really cool feature. At about 10 Ks into the race. Then they hit that KOM that you were talking about, and I'm sure the notes you were sent for the Tour de France on that particular day were like a phone book. And following that, the sprint after the KOM is about 17 kilometres in. So that middle part of the course is going to be action-packed, that's for sure.
Yeah, and it's all important to pick up the points to get yourself that opportunity for your club to have the jersey in game. We're just on about 2 minutes away from the racing getting underway. So all the riders, they'll be in the pens. And you know how important it is getting the warm-up right. You want to be just a little bit sweaty when the clock is doing that final 10-second countdown.
You certainly do. And when I was just logging in to see the numbers of the rides, and Zwift tells you who your friends and people that you follow in the game, who's actually riding. And I checked this at about 3 o'clock, and I saw some of the people on the start list today, Matt, that were already riding with an hour to go. So I guess, well, sometimes with the hard starts in the Zwift racing that we all know of, we love and hate. Yeah, the warm up is very, very important, and the timing of the warm up in Zwift as
Yeah,
well, Matt, is very
crucial.
important. You can't just start when the ticker goes to zero. You've got to kind of ramp it up to 300-400 watts as that start line goes.
Yeah, you do indeed. And the key is to warm up and not wear out, to get yourself ready to go. And we're just on 30 seconds before they get started. And you're right, it's that timing of the 10-second countdown and getting the motor going. It's a bit like one of those old cartoons, when the legs are going and then you get ready to roll. Like Roadrunner, ready to move out of the gates.
Absolutely, yeah, absolutely. It's the hardest part of the race is often the first 30 seconds. So I think as we get across to the racing very soon, we're going to see that fast start for both races. And as you can see here, looks like the racing is starting now. It's about a 1 or 2K lead in, and we're looking at the A grade bunch in the men's race. And as you can see, it is 75 strong. We're already seeing 6-7 watts per kilos in the stat sheet there. And you can see how fast it is going, Matt. Look at this bunch. There'll be a bit of drafting going on too.
Yeah, there are some really big numbers in terms of the power output, and you've nailed it. The description of what happens at the start. We're seeing 400 plus watts pretty early on. And Howie from Aero Racing, this is one of the really strong teams that has put together in-game racing. They've also translated quite a few of the riders out onto the open roads, and they're always a super strong squad to watch. And at the very start of the race, this is a super aggressive start. As you mentioned, they're on the lead and they haven't even reached the circuit yet.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a big start from the Aero team, and we're going to see a lot of them today. I think some super strong riders, and you can just see off the background there. This is great viewing of the race here. There's already a couple of riders who will be maxing out, and they're about, well, it's only 50 meters, but gee, they'll be going all in to try and get on the back of that bunch. But with a bunch this big, it's really, really tough to get into the draft when they're going that fast. As you can see in the game, 49 kilometers an hour. You've got to push a big to get back in the draft here.
You do, and it's really crucial to try and stay in that sweet spot and not waste too much energy early on. And see Howie, is this Cadell Howie? He's a young guy who was named after Cadell Evans. I've had the opportunity to meet him a few times out at a couple of bike races. It's good to see him showing himself in this A-grade race and pretty well positioned. But look at the heart rate. Don't worry about the watts for a moment. Have a look at the heart rate. We're getting close to 190. I mean, this is well above the best score that you can get in darts. There's no need for the cry of 180. These are big numbers.
Yeah, they certainly are. And the first, like we said, the first part of that race, that's where you're going to see the spike in the heart rate and the watts when we're looking at the stat sheet on this bike race. And as we mentioned, we've got a rider already just pinging off the front, and it's that team we were speaking about, Aero, and that is Cadell Harra. He's really been aggressive so far, but it's hard to get away early, Matt, on these courses, especially a flat course when everyone's fresh and that rolling momentum is quite high in the bunch. And you see it just like in outdoor races. It's similar to a criterium. If you're trying to break away, say in an outdoor criterium on a nice smooth hot mix on a flat course with a big bunch, it's very, very hard to stay away just because of that rolling momentum the Peloton behind you has. And that is similar to what Zwift racing acts like, I would say. So you can see Cadell just getting brought back there already.
Yeah, it is virtually impossible. We're on board now with Zito, who's punching out some really big numbers, up at almost 400 watts, 5.7 watts per kilo. The first of our power ups being used. This is an Aero power up out in front. And looks like this is Michael Gallagher that we're seeing up towards the front. If that's the Michael Gallagher that I think it is, normally rides for the Carnegie Caulfield Cycling Club, which is one of the strong clubs here in Melbourne. He's been a multiple representative of Australia at Para World Championships and Paralympics, and he has got the throttle fully open. This is a really strong start by him.
Yeah, certainly. And just looking on his Zwift power quickly, he is the one that actually has the highest 20-minute watts per kilo reading, according to Zwift power, 5.8 watts per kilo for a 20-minute effort. So, yeah, that's someone who you do not want to let get away. And perhaps we'll see him a little bit later, because that kind of power, I mean, yeah, they're all in the A-grade bunch. You're sitting above, obviously, 4 to 6 watts per kilo is the bracket. They've even put a bracket on it at 6. Well, Mr. Gallagher is actually pushing that, so he's certainly one to watch. And
that's huge numbers, isn't it? So for him to generate that 5.8, he's riding at 395 watts. That is huge. Chance to take a look at the women here, Jethro. There's not as many on the start list, which is a little disappointing that we don't have bigger numbers. But the good news with the women's race is that particularly in C grade and D grade, there are some really strong numbers. And this is a series, 6 weeks. There's a break, and then there'll be another 6-week series later in the season. It is a fantastic introduction to racing in a really safe environment.
Yeah, it certainly is. And the great numbers that we've seen in the lower grades already is a really good indication of where the sport's going, especially in Zwift, because those numbers down below, they're going to work their way up and then start entering A grade when they get the confidence and get the training in. And most of the time, it's just about feeling confident to step up. But those numbers are really, really promising. And, there's a category for everyone in Zwift. You don't have to be racing A grade. You can have your own racing experience against people of your own ability in your own grade, which is fantastic. But as we're looking at the racing on board with Kate Spicy, which I absolutely love, that's a great name. And we're looking at maybe a bunch of 7 here, Matt. And, we looked at the bunch in the men's, which is 70 strong. And we've got, it looks like we've got 14 on the line here, but 7 out front. The racing with less numbers, Matt, in Zwift is often more exciting because the draft you get in the bunch, it's a lot shorter and there's a lot less.
Yeah, it is a lot more difficult. What I like about Kate Spicy is on Zwift Power, next to her name, she's got a little chili. How do you get the chili next to your name on Zwift Power? I need one of those. That's sensational.
I just noticed that myself. Yeah, the chili. It's a shame it doesn't come up in game, but it's very interesting indeed. And you can see the bike choice as well. If we could talk about that for a moment. Obviously, we have the flat course, the bike setups. If you're not aware of this on Zwift, there are faster and slower bikes for different courses. Now, when you choose your equipment on the game, it has ratings with 0 to 5 stars. And there are many bikes that are classified as, say, 4-star speed and 4-star aero, but there are actually differences between. And Zwift Insider has done testing, and they found out that one of the fastest bikes out there is, of course, the Tron bike that we see, as Kate Spicy is just closing in a little move, and also the S-Works Venge. So between the Tron and the Venge, we're going to be seeing a lot of those bikes in the bunches today. And Kate is certainly using her Tron bike to an advantage, and she's pushing out 4 watts per kilo, just trying to get away and spice it up a little, I suppose, man.
Yeah, and as you look for experience in this, I'm tipping that the Tron is the choice. That is generally my choice of bike when I'm riding events on Zwift. And Kate is a level 50 Zwifter. So she's got plenty of Ks in her legs on Zwift, so she should know exactly what she's doing. But this is one of those moments, Jethro, that you alluded to earlier on with the smaller group. When the reaction comes, you don't have that time to get absorbed by big Peloton, pick up the draft, and then slot back in. You've got to up your reaction pretty quickly and make sure that you get on the wheel straight away. Because as you know, like a 1-second gap on Zwift, and you can have the wind in your face virtually, and it feels very real when you're at home in the garage.
Absolutely. And, I was racing last week, or actually a couple of weeks ago, on the Zwift Racing League, which is a really good platform, and we were doing the team's time trial. Now, the tip to the team's time trial when you're rolling off is actually to sprint out of the saddle when you get to the second last rider who's coming through on the bunch. Otherwise, you'll miss it and you won't be able to get in the draft. And that's kind of that's sort of the window a smaller bunch like the women's grade today is operating in. When there is an attack, if you've missed that sprint, that gap when the last or second last rider passes you, it's going to be very hard to get back on. But we're just going to cross to the men's race now. We've got 3 riders just chinging off the front that we might have a look at very soon. And 4 just across the bridge there on the coastline. All of them have got the deep dish wheels, the Zip 808s by the looks of it, Tron bikes, and the bunch is menacing, Matt. They are not going to let this one get away. Look at the wattages we're seeing here.
And here's some serious horsepower. This is Drew Ginn at the front, and he's a multiple Olympic Games gold medalist in rowing. He's tried to set the 24-hour world record at the Brunswick Velodrome a few years ago. And ironically, Jethro, when he did that, you'd think of velodrome. You're not thinking altitude gain, right? You're with me on that one?
Yeah.
He had 1,800 meters worth of altitude gain riding around the velodrome for 24 hours. He picked the wrong velodrome.
Certainly did, and maybe you could have followed the black line a little closer. Perhaps he's at the top of the track too much. He started to fall asleep, maybe. But we're seeing the bunch.
Brunswick Cycling Club. Look at the numbers he's putting out. He's at 500 watts. He's at 5. He's a big man. He weighs around. I think he probably weighs around about 85 kilos or so. He's a big, powerful guy. He's 40. I think he's 46 or 47 years of age. Drew Ginn. If you follow him on Strava, he's out in the ocean half the time on a paddle boat. He's, as I mentioned, Olympic Games gold medalist, part of the awesome foursome. But this guy does not even sit down and watch television. I'm convinced of it. He may as well not own a couch. He's consistently on the move, and he's an inspiration for those of us who are over 40.
Yeah, absolutely. And rowing's one of those sports, Matt, that we've seen as a great translator to cycling, or at least aerobic ability. And, there's been a few rowers that have obviously translated to cycling and vice versa. Thinking of guys like Cameron Worth, who rides for Ineos Grenadiers and is obviously an Ironman and one of the best out there, but also was an Olympian in rowing. And there was also a New Zealander, Mackenzie, or a similar name as well, who crossed over and was a national individual time trial champion. And that sort of aerobic engine that they like to mention with rowers, that is certainly an attribute that is handy when it comes to Zwift, because, you do spend a lot of racing, a lot of time in the racing at, your aerobic threshold or above.
Yeah, well, Drew himself was a Oceania individual time trial champion. He won that title. Perhaps that was only a couple of years after he retired from rowing. I know that his FTP now on doing the test on Zwift is up into the low 400s. And Cameron Worth is the best example. Olympic Games representative in 2004. He finished Paris-Roubaix on the weekend, part of the support crew for Dylan Van Baarle, who won. And he's one of the contenders for the Hawaiian Ironman. I hope he can't dance because he's good at everything else.
He certainly is. He was a late into Paris-Roubaix, I understand, as well. And I was listening to another podcast recently, and Luke Rowe and Geraint Thomas were saying they didn't even expect Worthy to get past the first sector, but he got well and truly into the race. And, we're just seeing now a little bit of a tick off the front here by 2 riders, by 3 riders. And again, the bunch just rolls up into them and swallows them up. And with Zwift, when it comes to the drafting, there is an art to it, like we spoke about just before. It's a little bit like trying to find the sweet spot. You don't want to pedal too hard to find yourself on the front of that moving bunch, just as it snakes its way through the France roads. But you don't want to pedal too less. You find yourself out the back, like this rider in the sort of navy purple kit at the back there, almost Bora Hansgrohe-esque. That is going to hurt. You need to find that sweet spot and, just sort of settle in, which is... Well, yeah, you got Mashed Potato there too from the Evo team. That's an interesting name. Certainly there's no bowl of mashed potato next to his name.
I hope there's plenty of butter and salt in that mashed potato. I've been fascinated as we've been chatting here, Jethro, to see some of the conversation that is going up on board. Here's another example. I'm carrying 82 beautiful kilos with me. You go, Shane King. That is a fantastic performance. And Shane's been playing himself down a little bit over the last couple of moments that I've been watching him post a few comments. I'm fascinated how you can participate in this event, whether it's in A grade or whether it's in D grade, as mashed potato. Mashed potato, a comment for him as well. How can you be typing when you're meant to be pedaling? Let's go. And we've got Nathan Campbell.
Oh,
You've always been heavy. Got the watts. So they're sledging each other whilst they're out on the bike. This is the
oh.
beauty of Zwift.
Yep, absolutely. And it brings me to a terribly embarrassing story of my own insights from the Zwift Racing League, round one, just 3 weeks ago, Matt. And I had done my best to make the front group as a B grade warrior. And we'd gotten past the hard section of the course, and we were heading down the zigzag descent of the KOM reverse. And everyone started getting in the chat a little bit of a little bit of cricket talk. And I thought, oh, I'll get amongst this. And I typed, well, guys, I've just pulled my cat off the trainer. Now it's time for me to clip in and get started. And by the time I'd sent that message, I'd been dropped from the group on the descent, and I didn't get back on. So
That's
you
no
can't
good.
just free pedal on the descent.
No,
And have a look at this. What's going on in the women's grade? We've got
this is a good
someone
move.
off the front.
This is Stephanie Corset. This is Steph Corset. She is the daughter of Ruth Corset, who was Australian National Road Champion many years ago. She then retired for a while as she had a couple of kids to raise through their teenage years. And now Steph Corset, there's two of the Corset sisters, daughters of Ruth. And Ruth was an Australian representative at World Championships, and her daughters are following suit. And they're hoping that next year at the Australian National Road Championships, IRL, across at Buninyong, that all three of them can be in the race together. But this is a really strong move by Steph Corset. And she's opened up a 3-second gap. Jethro, it's not a lot, but she's settled into a really good rhythm, and that's going to take some chasing.
Yeah, it certainly is. We know all about the Corset family, super talented, and it's so good to see a family unit like that racing. I'm sure their family bunch rides are super, super strong. But what you like to see when you make an attack in Zwift is you always look to your right and you have a look at that leaderboard, and you want to see the +1, +2, +3 as you're getting into your effort. And that's what you like to see. And you're constantly watching it. You're looking at it. Is it going up? Is it going down? And we can see here that it's splitting the race up 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 behind chasing at about 2 or 3 seconds behind. And then there is a split with another 4 riders behind. So this is probably exactly what Steph Corset has wanted to happen. She wanted to split this race up, and this front group of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 is going to come together. And that's the exciting racing. And all it takes is just 4.5, 5 watts per kilo to split it up if you don't mind. But again, that chase back to the group takes a long time and a lot of effort. So that's really cool to see a bit of action happening in the women's.
Yeah, Bemrose and Spicy are leading the chase to close things down. Back across to the men with Partridge Madsen. They're not too far away from hitting the climb. And this is where you can get an opportunity really to start to open up a gap. I wonder, Jethro, if anybody's going to take the risk of going on the move as they're not quite halfway through this race yet.
Yeah, well, this is probably it. We're going to see a few power-ups happen here because this is really the climb is approaching. And you can see just on the map, it is a bit of a snake, and it's about 5% average. Now let's have a look and see if we see any power-ups, and we do. We've got the feather rolling up, plenty of riders just activating that, trying to get the most out of it. Again, it's timing. Popping that feather off when it's at 0% advantage, like we're seeing just now, you're not getting a lot of advantage, but it can help you get a bit of a break. And now we'll see a little bit of a split. Look at these watts per kilos happening. This is 9.5 in the tens to get away. This is Mr. J Hunt. We'll see who that is kicking off, but it's splitting the race up. And look at the powers lighting up. 10 watts per kilo, it is on, and there's going to be a stretching of the bunch. If you can see in the map on the right-hand side, top right, it is all in one line. And once you start to see gaps in those circles, Matt, you know it's on.
Yeah, and MO it was that led them across, but the quickest time up the climb was 31.92 seconds. O went over in 32.22. So got to the KOM point first, but not necessarily the quickest time up the climb. That was brutally quick. And we saw some big numbers, some huge power output, and take a look at the way the bunch is strung out. This is reminiscent of what we see in real life. And Jethro, as you know, commentate on a bike race, you see the helicopter shot, and when it's in single file, you don't even need to look at the watts. you know that it is on.
Yeah, absolutely. There's plenty of stragglers out the back here, maybe 10 or 15, and there might be a little split happening up front as well. And it doesn't take much for the bunch to split apart if there is a big enough, I guess, selection relative to the size of the field. But I think, Matt, this one may come back together as a descent happening,
Yeah.
and they're still going to be pedaling on the descent, as we found out with my own story just earlier. Mashed potatoes there, kicking off. Nick Squilari from the Aero Masters is obviously super, super talented. And I'm just going through the bunch here on Zwift Power, and I'm going to take a look and see who's got a bit of sprint power as per their results, Matt. And there's a few guys in here that are nudging for a 15-second average around 1,000 watts. And those people there, we're talking about Bluey McKay, I can see here. We've got Drew Gin, what we spoke about
Mashed
earlier,
potato.
Torben, Patrick Madsen, Mashed Potato. There's some blokes in there that have got some big power, and they'll be hoping for it to come back together.
Yeah, and Haggerty has the biggest numbers with 1,337 for the 15 seconds. So I hope he's riding the Wahoo kicker, because if he's got his bike, or the Wahoo bike, I should say, as opposed to having his bike on the Wahoo kicker, because he would just about break the thing.
I'd be very scared about the dropouts if I was putting that kind of power out. But it's an interesting, I guess, feeling, sensation sprinting on the bike, on the ergo, man. It's not quite the same as outdoors. You kind of have to adjust your technique, and someone sprint indoors might be. Yep.
Begard with the comment, who else is tasting blood? We all know that feeling when you've got lactic acid in your teeth just about. But to have the ability to make that comment and get that out there online, I reckon you've got a little bit left in the tank.
Yeah, perhaps. Or they might have someone else standing there with the Bluetooth keyboard, because, yeah, we could just have a look at the profile now.
There's the climate they've just gone over. So there's still opportunities near the back end of this course, Jethro. As the bunch is getting whittled down just a little bit, there's still a chance for somebody to sneak away that doesn't have that 1,000 plus 15 seconds power output to see if they can get away from some of the quicker sprinters.
Yeah, definitely. The back end of that course kind of looks like an upside down key to my house, actually. Just looking at that, it's pretty spiky. And we're seeing that man again, the Olympian, the medalist, Drew Gin, and the others. Well, the others were tasting blood, but Mr. Drew, well, he might have a sip of gin, because he is off the front and he's got a 2-second gap. And I wonder how long he'll sustain that. And will that split the bunch up? Because by the looks of it, it is cracking the bunch a little bit and splitting it up. And we're just seeing the women's race now. They're just on the climb. Yep.
They're on the climb. They're almost over the top. This is Corset leading the charge.
And look at that. Aero power up as well, just to extend the advantage. That is really good timing, Matt, of the power up, using it on the flat section after the hardest part of the climb.
It is. It's perfect. And she's gone through with the quickest time. 38 seconds for Steph Corset as she's gone across the top. And I think this is more than just about winning the Queen of the Mountains points. This is her moment where she's going to launch, put her cards on the table, and see if anybody else can stick with her. It looks like Bimrose has been able to get across. Now the challenge for Corset is get on the wheel, hold on, and those two could work together and ride all the way through to the finish to split the top step of the podium between them.
Yeah, they certainly can. They're about to hit the downhill section as we just cross back to the men and have a look at this. We're seeing this is actually near the Ballon Sprint, which is obviously called that because you can see the hot air balloons in the background there, and the race is on. That move from Drew Gin has certainly threw the cat amongst the pigeons, and as they're approaching the end of the Ballon Sprint, it's certainly wound up. And who have we got on the front? It looks like, well, it could be Jay Smith, but it's about to get rolled over for this sprint. They're not really riding for that one, but they're going to get the new power-ups. As you see, a dump of all the power-ups. You can see the arrows, the feathers, everybody getting rid of their power-ups to then collect their new one, and hopefully they get a few aero boosts, because that's what they'll need for the second half of this course, Matt. And you know, we just saw the hot air balloons. You can see them in the background. They're really, really cool. We see that in the Tour de France as well, and some of the stages that you would have called, Matt. But did you know that this course, at the start of the course, around 8-9 Ks, it actually goes past Mont Saint-Michel, which of course was in the 2016 Tour de France. An epic bit of infrastructure, certainly look it up. It's a heritage literature site, and it's when you Google it and have a look at what that is, it's amazing. It must have been a really cool place to start off the Tour de France.
It's a town that is a postcard. It is a living, historic postcard. It is one of the most beautiful parts of the world. And one of the iconic images of the Tour de France is Mont Saint-Michel. This is an attack by Sherwin, no relation to Paul Sherwin, the sadly departed great man Paul Sherwin. Different spelling for Matthew Sherwin, but riding strongly. And he's been pretty active. We've seen Sherwin make a few moves off the front. He's punching out some huge numbers. Jethro, 8 watts per kilo. Take a breather. You've got to settle down. It's hard to maintain rhythm anywhere near that.
Yeah, certainly won't be typing anything looking at those kind of powers. But another good indication of who's got a really good sprint is when we just went through the sprint banner there. It brought up the fastest in that sprint segment, and often the top 10 are up there at the front is a really good indication of who has got a little bit of sprint power. As we were watching Matt Sherwin here, just push 5.5 watts per kilo, just to try and stay away, and he's only got a 2 second gap. I reckon he'd like a few friends, but doesn't look like anyone is prepared to launch out of that bunch.
He's going to get too many. What I find fascinating is looking at his cadence, RPMs. He's just riding at around about 70 RPMs. And when I see those sorts of numbers in terms of cadence, the rider that always comes to mind is Justine Barrow. And it doesn't look super efficient, but for her it works. And clearly for Sherwin, it's working as well. Meanwhile, you'll see some other riders, they'll be sitting at 90, 95, 100 revs per minute. And it's just whatever works best for you. And clearly for Sherwin, he's done lots of strength endurance work. As we're coming down towards the business end of the race, Jethro, 5 kilometres remaining.
5 kilometres remaining, and we've got Cadel Howie again. A little bit of a counter attack, just on a little roll, and you can see Nick Squilari there. The Aero team have 3 in this front little move, and it was a slight riser with a downhill. It is like a team time trial. There's a couple of fish in the middle there, but no mashed potato in this meal. And with not that long to go, this is a dangerous move with 3 of the strongest teams in this move of now. Looks like 7. And have a look at some of the bike setups. We've got disc wheels. We've got Tron bikes as the bunch comes back together. But we saw the profile of this course, Matt, at the back end was like an upside down key or a toothbrush that's missing a few bristles. And we can tell that these risers that we're seeing now, 4%, are going to hurt the bunch. And there's launch pads galore. With only 4K to go, as we're seeing power ups being used. This is the drafting power up here from the rider up front. We'll get their names soon. It's of course Gallagher again. He does not want to sprint, this man, Matt.
No, he is powerful, but he's not a sprinter. He's a fantastic time trialist. He's been very good on the track in the individual pursuit, and he has got perseverance. He's currently punching out 6.5 watts per kilo, close to 7. That's only sustainable for a minute or two. His heart rate is high, but we spoke before about the cadence with Sherwin at about 70. Look at the cadence of Gallagher. He's at the other end of the spectrum. He's above 100 the whole time, pushing close to 105. And I really like the momentum that Gallagher's been able to build up. And it's Sherwin who's leading the chase.
Well, he's not just leading the chase. He's trying to get across. When you see those numbers light up, 6 watts per kilo, Gallagher's trying to hold, and that's what it takes to try and get away. And here comes Nick Scolari. He's going to go over the top of Sherwin, and he's got another rider giving him a little bit of a drive. He can get in the wheel of Kay Bratz, and this is a dangerous move. Look at the speed from this rider in the purple Tron bike, and this is a very dangerous move. It's on an incline. It's a little bit of a roller. There's 3 up front now, but the bunch is still quite large, and I think, Matt, there's quite a few riders that we haven't seen touch the wind yet, but we certainly can see the riders that do not want to sprint, and Aero is one of those.
Yep. I love this part of the course. Nick Scolari, Velo Kicks, leading the charge. When you're in game and you're doing a race and you're on this part of the course, you actually find yourself with your head tilting, trying to get around these corners and push your way into the group and get more slipstream. You almost get motion sickness.
Yeah, certainly. It's just part of the immersion of the game, and the graphics are getting so good these days. It really, really makes a difference. You can see there we've got South African national jersey there just in the back left corner. That's Jeffrey Creel. He's a Western Australian representative And he's quite a strong rider, definitely from my neck of the woods, and loves a bit of Zwift, an early adopter, that's for sure. But there isn't long to go, Matt. We've only got just under 2Ks to
Yeah.
go, and there's plenty of riders just trying to get away and try and beat the bunch, but it's going to be tough.
Yeah, and it's Gallagher once again. It's Seb who's doing the chasing
Wow.
just behind him. They've managed to get themselves together, but it's only a 1 second gap. Larson from Sweden. It's good to see some internationals in this AusCycling, a Club National Esports series. And there's also Mashed Potatoes. He's from the US. There's a few Danish flags in there. There's a French flag as well. Good to see a Norwegian is out there. But this is a really strong move by Gallagher and Seb, and they're still holding on to just 1 second. I don't think it's going to be enough, Jethro.
Oh, no, not quite enough, especially on a downhill run. Very hard to stay away with two riders against what looks like around 40 or 50. The collective speed of that bunch is too much. Now, we can see a power up being used there by one of the riders in that yellow jersey, but it's going to
It's
be the
early.
riders that have it's early. They're going to need to hold off and just hold those aero boosts. That's what you want to see in the sprint. You want to have that pegged in the left-hand side, ready to nail it. But we're seeing the Aero Masters squad, perhaps a tactic of those because they're very experienced racing as a team, sending a rider up the front, maybe just to string things out and get a little bit of organisation when they go into the sprint with, well, there's not long to go. There's about maybe three or 400 meters to go. No, there's a little bit longer than that. And we're seeing, 1 kilometer to go. And it's really starting to thin out, Matt. It's starting to get into one line. And look at these watts per kilos. It's not exactly high yet. Timing the sprint in this race is really crucial. It's almost a double sprint as we're seeing P. Bergard, the French rider with the aero boost, is already hitting out early. Who's in his wheel? It looks like Nick Spratt. He's got the wheel 10, 11 watts per kilo over the top. And they've got to turn this corner here. Has he gone too early? He's got the aero booster. Now the bunch is starting to come up behind P. Bergard, but Nick Spratt, does he have enough to hold on? There's not long left in this bike race to get the turn right. Look at the aero power-ups. We've got Nick from Velo Kicks is there. Abram Rose is going for it on the right-hand side, but how about yellow? There's people who have left it really late, but someone's coming through the middle. Is it Mashed Potato? No way. Have we just seen a meal win round one of the Zwift AusCycling Club Series? Matt, that was chaotic.
It was chaotic. Mashed Potato with the best in-game name. Here's a look at the replay. Nick went really early. And this was the first time we had an opportunity to mention Nick Spratt. He is the brother of Amanda Spratt. He just got the timing ever so slightly wrong. Jethro, I think Nick Spratt had the horsepower to win this if he had been a little bit more patient. But the Sprats aren't renowned for waiting. They're aggressive by their nature, and that's why we love to see them performing. But Mashed Potatoes, we only saw his data. We saw that he was close to 1,400 watts for the 15 seconds, and he put it to good use. And as you spoke about throughout the race, the timing of using the power-up was also vital.
It was.
And that charge through the middle.
Mashed Potato. Yeah, he was about 15 wheels back with about 200 meters to go, and he didn't even have a power up. So he's hitting 13 watts per kilo over the line. So he certainly timed it well. And yeah, Nick Spratt, I reckon you're right. He did have the horsepower, but he used a sprint too early. I think the key to that particular course is opening your sprint proper and any aero power-ups you've got as you take that last right-hand turn. We're getting another replay here, just folding back, and you can see, look at Mashed Potato. And Ben Rose, Haggerty,
You're making me hungry.
Yeah, well, if it was going to be any potato, it would certainly be the sweet kind, because winning like that with the pink disc as well, don't mind if you do. Now, Matt, we're on board here with a group of 3 in the women's race. It's down to 3.
And it's just over 4 kilometres remaining. And Kate Spicey is there. So too is Steph Corset and Bemrose, who has been super consistent, always marking the moves. The 3 strongest riders have clearly managed to get themselves together, which is exactly what you would expect. And this is going to make for a really tactical sprint. And we saw the importance in the previous race of the benefit of getting the timing right. as we see Kate Spicy, Jessica Bemrose and Steph Corset, the three riders out in front with a pretty handy lead, 35 seconds to the next chaser.
Yeah, certainly. So that front podium is locked in, no doubt about that. And just looking at the wattages there, they're just keeping the pace high. They certainly are not sort of, I guess, watching each other as you might see in a finale of a race with a breakaway late. They're still on that 3 to 4 watts per kilo. So they're just keeping the pace high, taking turns to ensure they maintain that gap. But it's only going up because those riders behind are actually fragmented and riding solo. We've got one rider in a drift at 38 seconds back, 49 seconds back, and so on. So the winner is going to come from this group. And if we look at some of the sprint numbers on Zwift Power, which is some of the data we have live to have a look, Jessica Bemrose, she's operating on around 11 and a half watts per kilo for 15 seconds in a sprint. Kate Spicy's also got a bit of chili at 10 watts per kilo at her best ranked sprint. And just looking at Stephanie Corset, wow, she can push out around 12 watts per kilo. That is certainly moving. But Steph Corset also has, and she's got the ability to put out 5 watts per kilo for 20 minutes. And I wonder, will she use some of that power here? There certainly isn't 20 minutes left. There's less than 2.
No, well, she's used plenty of power already. She's the one that forced the issue on the Queen of the Mountains climb as they went past the Pont de Gare. She's the one that forced the breakaway earlier on. So she's trying to take a little bit of the sting out of the tail of the other two riders in the move with her. You've gone through what their wattage is per kilo for that 15 seconds. It's really fascinating to look at the actual raw power numbers themselves. The three of them are separated by just 4 watts. Their weight obviously separates them a little bit, but it's 636 watts for Steph Corset. It's 637 for Jessica Bemrose, and it's 640 for Kate Spicy. So in raw power numbers, that is as tight as it can get. So power to weight, it comes down to the weight once again. As we see Spicy making a move. She's putting the pressure on.
Oh, yeah. Oh, she is. Look at this, 7 watts per kilo to close that gap. We're watching Spicy in the green, Jessica Bemrose in the purple, and Steph Corset has found herself off the back with no lights on her bike. That's right. Looks like we've got, well, it's a bit of licorice, all sorts, the purple and green kind, because Kate and Jessica now have a proper gap. And look at Stephanie Corset stomping the pedals, 9, 10, 11 watts per kilo. She's giving up her sprint mat to get back on. It looks like she might roll back onto the back of them. But how much has this cost all three of these bunches? Now, I wonder, will Steph use the momentum she's gathered here as it goes downhill? Will she go over the top? She's still stomping 8. No, she's
but look at the drop in wattage. Look at the wattage.
Yes.
The wattage has gone down to 3.
Wow.
She has kicked the clutch in. That was an all-out sprint to close it down. They're inside the last couple of kilometres. So that's a good move, though, by Spicy and Bemrose to put Corset under pressure. As you went through the power numbers before, she's got the highest watts per kilo for 15 seconds. So that was a use of those watts. And there's only so many candles you can burn. So the youngster in the group has been really challenged by the 2 more experienced riders, not too far away from seeing this sprint light up.
Oh, absolutely. And we noticed in the men's race, it was who left their sprint to after that right-hand turn. I wonder, will we see anyone go too early like we saw in the men's? But with 3, you can play it a lot more coy. You sit, you choose the right gear when you're in the bike. And then you sort of look at the numbers on the right and you wait. You wait to see those numbers light up. Who goes first, then you react. And no doubt about it, these women here will be in the drops and they'll be waiting to stomp their sprint as it ramps up 5, 6, 7 watts per kilo. Looks like Jessica Bemrose is absolutely waking up the sprint, and here she goes. She's going to lead it out from the front. Has she gone too early? Here comes Jessica. She got a great sprint, over 10 watts per kilo, but here comes Stephanie Corset. She's going to get on the draft. Has she got enough to get over the top of Jessica, who's holding on? They're going to go to the line, but Stephanie Corset has timed it beautifully, and she's gone over the top of Jessica Bemrose, who opened up that sprint very early. It looked like great timing, but we'll go back to a replay and just have a look, Matt, at where the sprint started. It was impressive by both Jessica and Stephanie. What do you reckon, Matt?
Oh, that was huge. Let's not forget the chase that Stephanie Corset just had to put in to rejoin them. So Bemrose and Spicy, they made the right decision to try and get some distance on her before the sprint. And as you referenced, with a few kilometres to go, she had the highest watts per kilo for 15 seconds, which is 12. And she was punching out some huge numbers up at 15 watts per kilo mark as she was closing in on Bemrose. She is one of the young rising stars of Australian cycling, and for good reason. We saw it here. She was challenged, looked like she was distanced. She didn't panic and use a power up to be able to close down that gap. And throughout this sprint, there was no power ups used. They might have been used a little bit earlier when we were watching the men's race. They could have been attacking each other. But that sprint by Corset and still holding almost 13 watts per kilo all the way to the finish line. I think that she needs to sign up for the Zwift Academy at the end of the year and try and get herself a spot on a World Tour team.
Oh, absolutely. That was an amazing race, and really cool to see the finishing and the broadcast level of watching this race. That was really cool to be able to see the replays of the racing, and a really, really good effort there from Stephanie Corset to take the win. And like you said, really showed her class in that breakaway as well. Jessica Bemrose and remind myself of Kate Spicy as well. So it was a great group of three. And Matt, with today's racing, well, with the men's, if we talk about the men's first, do you think it was what you expected?
Well, I've never seen mashed potato before that's not on a dinner plate. So I was really impressed with the performance by mashed potatoes, and somebody who can punch out 1,300 watts per kilo for 15 seconds. The numbers were there already to give us an indication that he was going to be one to watch. I like the way Drew Ginn tried to make the race really tough. He's not a patient man. He tries to destroy everybody else around him. And it was good to see Nick Spratt. I would have liked to have seen Nick Spratt maybe just hold back a little bit and back himself for the final sprint. Next week, it's around Mercury Island. It's the Wandering Flats. So maybe Nick can take something out of the fact today that he was one of the strongest guys there, and he can potentially win this. And another Nick Scolari, I liked how aggressive he was. But we certainly saw the future of Australian cycling with Steph Corset in the women's race. Another highlight for me, Jethro, was hearing the excitement of our producer, Anna, all the way over in New Zealand, going, oh, look at those numbers. We need to put her in commentary next week.
Yeah, we might need to throw to her as a bit of a boundary operator. That's what I think. But we can see the results get brought up. We'll just have a look and see in the men's. We've got Nick Scolari in third position. Was that Nick Spratt? Or it might be Nick Scolari. It is from Velo Kicks. Adam Bemrose. Yep. So another Bemrose on the podium. That's a pretty good day out for the Bemrose household. And Kyle Marwood. Now, we saw Mashed Potato take the victory, but he was a US competitor. And second place, Joshua Haggerty, was from NZ. Yep. And third place in the race was actually from Japan. So it's the first three ranked Australian, and here we see Kyle Marwood, Adam Bemrose, and Nick
Kyle Marwood's a good bike rider. He's got some really good results throughout his career, and he's got plenty of horsepower. He's been strong on the track, strong on the road, and the National Road Series level. So it's a really good start for him to the series with 5 races to go in this first of the series. At this time of the year, there's another 6 races in the second part of the year. But I love that we've got the internationals in there and take it up to the next level, and we can really see where the local guys are at in this race, and a good performance by Kyle to take that one out.
Yeah, absolutely. And they threw it up and really caused a lot of hurt for everyone else as well in the women's results. We obviously know Kate Spicy, who was really aggressive early with that chili next to her name. Jessica Bemrose, so the Bemrose family, just operating on 2 silver medals. I know they'll want gold for the next race. And Stephanie Corset, the winner of round 1 in the women's grade. And a great race from everyone, and like we mentioned at the start of the race, is the women's racing was very aggressive early. With less riders, only 7 riders lined up. Yeah. It was always going to be a race that would split up like that. Versus the men's, there were some equally strong attacks, but that just the mechanics of Zwift, it's too hard to get away with a bunch that big on a course that isn't quite as difficult. So. Expected result, a bunch sprint for the men's and a split up for the women's race.
Yeah, and there's nowhere to hide in the women's race. When the group is that small, there's nowhere to hide. What was really good about the women's racing that we didn't get the opportunity to see, but we can take a look at the results, is really good numbers in C grade and D grade. And that's one of the real benefits of this platform, is hopefully those that are doing it on this platform starting to do it out in the real world as well, and we can continue to grow the sport. And let's hope that anybody that's watching this or has participated in this, encourage other women at your club to get involved, be part of it. There's 5 rounds still to go in the first series for the year. There's another 6 weeks later on in the year. And just make the start line and make the finish line. You're winning points for your club, and you can get a chance to wear your club jersey in-game in the future.
Yeah, absolutely. And all the points matter. It's not just the top grades. It's B down to C and D, of course. And it's so easy to get out there. And sometimes around this time of the year, Matt, the weather isn't quite as good. So Zwift provides an opportunity.
Hey, I'm in Melbourne.
Yeah, yeah.
I'm in Melbourne. I'm all for Zwift in the garage.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's a collective points gather from the clubs that'll lead to that winning jersey. And I mean, I might have to get my club into this race because I want my own club jersey in this game.
Oh, the strongest club that I know from your side of the country, Midlands, they can't enter it because they've got too many strong riders that are currently over in Europe riding the World Tour.
Yeah, that's certainly right. There's plenty of riders from Midland that have not only on the road but on the track as well. Guys like Luke Durbridge, Cam Meyer. It's a talent factory, that's for sure, over in Midland. And I was actually interested to see if the Brunswick Cycling Club would be well represented because they too have some very talented riders operating in the World Tour that we know.
Luke Platt, Sarah Gigante, Mitch Docker was part of that club. The Ruby Roseman Gannon as well. It's a phenomenally strong club. It is brilliant.
And this course, Matt. Yeah, well, just this course, the last touch on, we said Sarah Gigante's, the R.G.V course was used for the very first Tour de France, the virtual edition. And Sarah Gigante finished second in that final Ventop finish to Ashley Moolman-Pasio. And you might not know this, Matt, or the listeners and the viewers out there, that for finishing on the podium of that Ventop Tour de France stage, those 3 women, Moolman-Pasio and Gigante, and I forget who finished third, their names are on the road of Ventop in the game.
That.
So when you ride that course, you'll see Gigante written on there, just so I can see the ride-ons behind me. And that's what they got, which is pretty cool. So
that is very good.
Hey,
well, next week, Wandering Flats, you'll be leading the charge once again. I'm looking forward to seeing more riders on the start line, some bigger numbers, and seeing if Kyle Marwood can stay at the top and Steph Corset can stay at the top in the women's race.
Absolutely. We're going to have to wait and see who just times their taper right, Matt. It was a real pleasure to do round 1 with you, and I hope everybody enjoyed the coverage, and hopefully we'll see you again next week for round 2.
Right on.